Hello and welcome to Xinhua Live. I'm Yu Yue with Xinhua News Agency. I'm now in Vienna's International Center. The Ancient China Navigation Exhibition opens here on Tuesday. Invited by the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, the exhibition showcases the technological and cultural evolution of China's navigation. And today we are just here to show you around some of the highlights of the exhibition, and we are very pleased to have Ms. Chen Ling, the engineering of National Time Service Center from Chinese Academy of Sciences. Hi, Ms. Chen. Would you like to briefly introduce some highlights of the exhibition, please?
Okay, no problem. Welcome to our exhibition, Asian China Navigation Exhibition from Compass to Beidou. Our exhibition has 5 parts. So this is the first part, it's about time. The second part is about geomagnetic navigation and astronavigation. The third part is about mapping and surveying. The fourth part is about exchange. The fifth part is about the Beidou navigation satellite system. So in terms of navigation, time and space are 2 inseparable parts. So let's tour around the time part first. The first thing you see is the sun clock, because in the beginning of the civilization, ancient people all use the sun to keep their time because the rise and set of the sun is apparent and periodic. So this one is the Taosi site. It was built 4,000 years ago. Ancient people stand in the middle to observe the sunrise through different gaps to know different seasons. The ring is arranged in the at the equinox, to equinox. The rise of the sun, the direction is due east. So people observe the sunrise through the middle of the gaps to guide our agriculture produce. This is also the sundial. It's the sun clock. This one is called the Xiamen Small Wild Goose Pagoda sundial. The specialty of this one is there is an axis between the dial and the base plate, so the angle could be adjusted to the latitude of where you are. With the development of the time and science and technology, there is a need to measure even shorter time intervals. So that's why artificial timing devices were invented. So the first thing you see is the dragon bowl incense timings. This is the incense with the scales on it, and the incenses were placed on the back of the dragons. The burning of the incense was considered uniform. So with the burning of the incense, it will show the pass of the time. When the thread is burned down, the fall of the bead will make the sound to broadcast the times, just like nowadays alarming clock.
It's quite smart invention.
Yeah, very smart. Mm-hmm. And this one is the Lilan steel yard clepsydra. It is said that the daily era of this kind of the timing devices was limited to 1 minute because it uses the siphon principle to bring the water out from the big kettle to the small containers. When the small containers is full, it means a quarter has passed. Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to see something more interesting.
Yeah. So this one is the replica. Actually, the original one, the original one was in Dengfeng County, and it was built by very famous Chinese astronomer Guo Shoujing around 900 years ago. See, the standing one is the obelisk, and the lying one is the rulers. And actually, there is a beam here. It measures the sun. Cast its shadows. It's measure the sun shadow length. At sharp noon, the sun will cast its shadows through the beams in between these obelisks to the rulers. At summer solstice, the length of the sun shadow is the shortest, and at winter solstice, the length of the shadow is the longest. By calculating how many days from one summer solstice to the other, Guo Shoujing successfully reached the figure of the length of one tropical year, which is only 25 seconds difference with the figures we use nowadays. So it's very accurate. Mm-hmm. So this one is the water-driven astronomical clock tower. It was built by Su Song. He was a premier in the later Song dynasty. And he is not only the premier, the statesman, but also the very great scientist. The original one was 12 meters high. This one was the replica. It is 1 to 14 scales. So this is very mini size, but it has all the 3 stories of the original ones. The first one you see is a clock. It has hour, the minute, and dawn, dusk, midnight. As for the hours, it is a system of 12 2-hour period. And as for the minute, the shortest time at that time was a quarter. It was not 1 minute, but a quarter. One day has 96 quarters. And this one is the second story. It's the celestial sphere. It can demonstrate the movement of the celestial body automatically. And
Second floor.
the second floor, yeah. And the third floor is the armillary sphere. And there is the skylight on top of the roof. So when the skylight is open, the astronomer could level the sighting tube at the stars. It can track the movement of the star automatically. And just like nowadays, you can see the same thing. It's called the driving clock in nowadays astronomy observatory. All these 3 stories are driven by the waters. There is a multi-level water outflow water containers in it. So the water will flush out from the water clock, which will drive the gear wheels, and through the transmission system, the water force will be provided to the first floor, second floor, and the third floor. And the important part of this clock tower is actually the escapement mechanism. The invention of the escapement mechanism was first used in this water clock. It makes the movement of the gear wheel controllable. It's earlier than the escapement mechanism used in the pendulum clock in the Western countries by around 600 years. So this one is the ancestors of the Western medieval astronomical clock tower, said by the very famous historian of science, Joseph Needham of Britain. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
Yes. This one is the second part of our exhibition. It's about geomagnetic navigation and astro navigations. So first you see is a very famous south-pointing ladles. South-pointing ladles is made by the whole piece of the lodestones, and it was placed on a very smooth base plate. So see, it's moving now. So when it stops moving, the handle of this ladle will point to the south. It is one of the 4 great inventions in ancient China, and the first one was invented around 2,000 years ago, but after it is invented, it was not used in the navigation industry. It was used in the geomancy, or say feng shui in Chinese. And this one has the frictions and it's very heavy.
Thank you so much for your introduction. Thank you.
Thank you very
So
much.
for more introduction, we are very pleased to have Mr. Shen Jun, the Deputy Director of International Cooperation Center of China Satellite Navigation Office. Hello, Mr. Shen.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. So would you like to tell us more about the Beidou and especially its international cooperation?
Sure. From this board, we can see from very beginning, Beidou, in its design principle, is a Chinese Beidou, world's Beidou, or Beidou made by China but dedicated to the world. So from the first day, Beidou itself have its international characteristics. Here we are in the UN building, and we have a meeting, International Committee on GNSS, which is the governing body at UN, talking about navigation, talking about application, international market. You can see from this board, currently Beidou is not only widely used in the Chinese people's life, but also has been exported to more than 100 countries and regions. And for example, we have been working to let Beidou step out the country. And for example, last year we went to Tunis, we went to Russia, and And also coming back to the interoperability part, actually the Chinese government has signed the bilateral agreement with United States, with Russia, with Europe to make sure that all GNSS systems can work together.
Okay. Would you like to please tell us more on the applications of Beidou in different kind of areas?
Sure. Like I still remember about 20 years ago when we started with Beidou, and that's probably very very expensive and very sophisticated areas can use Beidou. Nowadays, 20 years later, and for example, over there you can see on the fishing boat. I can, for example, I can take example. Which one is fishing? Oh, here is the fishing boat. Before, like our fishermen, and they normally go out for fishing, and there's no communication devices for them to communicate with their families, with their management. And nowadays, actually, this is one of the very popular applications for Beidou. And all the fishermen can through a very unique characteristic of Beidou called short messaging system. They can send short messages with their families, and in case there's a typhoon or something, and they can also be notified on time. So nowadays they say, for fishermen there is a goddess called Mazu, and nowadays when they go out, they first pray for Mazu, and secondly they pray for Beidou. A similar example would be over there. You can see that's our Chinese government have initiative. All the transportation vehicles, school buses have to equip with Beidou system. Now we have over 6 million vehicles being integrated into such a system, and that makes the world largest platform of its kind in the world. For example, you can see here in 2008, we all know there is a big earthquake in Wenchuan, and all the ground facilities have been destroyed. Actually, it was Beidou who sent out the stress calls to help people for the emergency services. Those, for example, those is called, this system is another interesting system called GNSS-R. Basically use the reflection signals from the sea surface to detect is any abnormals. For example, if there's a typhoon or is something, and this is another look. So this is the meteorologic applications. So let's say another example I like to share is that 20 years ago the related industry output is almost zero. If it's nothing, probably neglectable. Nowadays, last year we have 300 billion yuan, 300 billion yuan. So that's from 0 to 300 billion. That's an improvement. And also, probably everyone has a smartphone nowadays. Currently, 70% of the smartphones delivered, sold in China are equipped with Beidou. The only one exception is a U.S. company. I wouldn't say here, but they don't have a Beidou. But I'm sure soon they'll have a Beidou. So to summarize, Beidou has jumped from something or very sophisticated equipment to something covering not only big industries, but also to daily life, such as daycare, like fishing boat, maritime applications, meteorology, like navigator, for example. That's another thing. So we are very proud of what Beidou have achieved. I'm sure as time goes by, and by the end of next year, the Beidou Strait, the Beidou global system will be fully deployed. I'm sure next year we're standing here, that will be a much better Beidou.
Yeah, as we can see in the exhibition that there's a long history that in the Belt and Road in history that, and nowadays the Beidou navigation also play an important role in the interconnectivity along with the Belt and Road Initiative.
Right.
So would you like to tell us more about the cooperation along the Belt and Road Initiative countries?
Yeah, for any, you're talking about connectivities, any connectivities like position, timing, those characteristics are very important for anything. For Beidou Road, I remember I'm proud the very first system exported to another international customer is that about 6 years ago we built the first high precision network for Pakistan. I'm proud to be the program manager for that one. And as times goes by, we went to, I went to Thailand, we went to Pakistan, Laos, Cambodia. Recently, we went to Russia. We have a close relationship with a bilateral relationship between Beidou and GLONASS. Recently we went to Tunisia, like Egypt, and many other countries. Of course, there is another one. Here is actually, if you're talking Belt Road Initiative or regions, this on the China, Euro-China freight application, train applications, that's a very direct usage to support the countries in the Belt Road.
Okay, thank you so much for your introduction.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
You're welcome.
Well, as we can see, the exhibition also attracts a lot of visitors. Let's interview some of them. Hello, sir. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Would you like to briefly introduce yourself and how do you think about this exhibition, please?
Oh, thank you. My name is Rick Hamilton. I work for the U.S. Coast Guard Navigation Center, and I am the GPS Information Analysis Team Lead for the Navigation Center and the Executive Secretariat for the Civil GPS Service Interface Committee. And this is the U.S. committee that has fielded civil GPS throughout the world over the years.
So do you have cooperation with Beidou and
Yes, as a matter of fact, in our activity here with the International Committee on Global Navigation Satellite Systems, ICG, we are forming cooperation agreements with the other service centers, if you will. Navigation Center is the service center for the GPS program, and we have just recently introduced a proposal to the China Satellite Navigation Office's Test and Assessment Research Center, TARC, they call themselves. And it is just a cooperation agreement to share information on disruptions and inquiries. If, for instance, if a school children write a letter and inquire about Beidou, we will send it to the TARC and they can answer the question. If there are disruptions, that somebody reports a case of a disruption of the Beidou signal, we will send it to the TARC and they can answer this question from the inquirer. So it's a proposal we've just recently introduced to the TARC.
So what do you think about the cooperation by Beidou and with other navigation system, even though you all do navigation, but it's more like a cooperation, right?
This is it's very interesting that China has gained so much ground in the last little while. They fielded Beidou very quickly. This is going to be an interesting addition to the global navigation satellite system of systems out there, and so now they join GPS and Russia's GLONASS and Europeans Galileo, and now we have Beidou, and these systems are just so valuable to the world now. Almost every facet of our lives have some connection to these global navigation satellite systems, from navigation to timing in your cell phone to timing for automatic bank tellers, ATMs. People just don't realize how far inside the technology that we use that these timing signals from the satellites are embedded.
So, what's your impression about this exhibition?
Oh, this is just fantastic. So far back, my expertise is as a navigator for the U.S. Coast Guard, and to me, this is very dear to my heart. The history of navigation, and even if you go back to Marco Polo visiting China for the first time in the, yeah, it's just very, very interesting. All the different ways that were invented to determine direction and distance, and it's very, very interesting. I just love this.
Okay, thank you so much for taking our interview. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Well, as time goes by, that it's time to say goodbye. Thank you for watching us. If you like us, please share it with your friend in YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Please follow us, and see you next time.